Hi, here in this video let's know about On Heroes and Hero Worship by Thomas Carlyle, which is a literary reconstruction of a series of 6 public lectures delivered between May 5th and 22nd, 1840, and which were the culmination of his 4-year experiment as a public lecturer. Let's know the detailed summary of all the lectures.
On Heroes and Hero Worship by Thomas Carlyle. On Heroes and Hero Worship. This is the last of 4 series of lectures which Carlyle delivered in London in successive years, and is the only series which was published. The lectures on heroes were given in May, 1840, and were published, with emendations and additions, from the reporter's notes in 1841. The preceding series were on German literature, 1837. The Successive Periods of European Culture, 1838, and The Revolutions of Modern Europe, 1839. Carlyle's profound and impassioned belief in the quasi-divine inspiration of great men, in the authoritative nature of their message, and in their historical effectiveness, was a reaction against a way of writing history which finds the origin of events in movements, currents, and tendencies, neglecting or minimizing the power of personality. For Carlyle, biography was the essential element in history. His view of events was the dramatic view, as opposed to the scientific view. It is idle to inquire which is the better or truer view, where both are necessary. But Carlyle is here specially tilting against a prejudice which has so utterly passed away that it is difficult even to imagine it. This was to the effect that eminent historical figures have been in some sense impostors. This work suffers a good deal from its origin. But, like others of Carlyle's writings, it has had great effect in discrediting a barren and flippant rationalism. 1. The hero as divinity. We have undertaken to discourse on great men, their manner of appearance in our world's business, how they shaped themselves in the world's history, what ideas men formed of them, and what work they did. We are to treat of hero worship and the heroic in human affairs. The topic is as wide as universal history itself, for the history of what man has accomplished in this world is, at bottom, the history of the great men who have worked here. It is well said that a man's religion is the chief fact with regard to him. I do not mean the church creed which he professes, but the thing that he does practically believe, the manner in which he feels himself to be spiritually related to the unseen world. Was it hedonism, a plurality of gods, a mere sensuous representation of the mystery of life, and for chief recognized element therein physical force? Was it Christianism, faith in an invisible as the only reality, time ever resting on eternity, pagan empire of force displaced by the nobler supremacy of holiness? Was it skepticism, uncertainty, and inquiry whether there was an unseen world at all? Or perhaps unbelief and flat denial? The answer to these questions gives us the soul of the history of the man or nation. Odin, the central figure of Scandinavian paganism, shall be our emblem of the hero as divinity. And in the first place I protest against the theory that this paganism or any other religion has consisted of mere quackery, priestcraft, and dupery. Quackery gives birth to nothing, gives death to all. Man everywhere is the born enemy of lies, and paganism, to its followers, was at one time earnestly true. Nor can we admit that other theory, which attributed these mythologies to allegory, or to the play of poetic minds. Pagan religion, like every other, is indeed a symbol of what men felt about the universe, but a practical guiding knowledge of this mysterious life of theirs, and not a perfect poetic symbol of it, has been the want of men. The Pilgrim's Progress is a just and beautiful allegory, but it could never have preceded the faith which it symbolizes. Men never risked their soul's life on allegories. There was a kind of fact at the heart of paganism. To the primitive pagan thinker, who was simple as a child, yet had a man's depth and strength, nature had as yet no name. It stood naked, flashing in on him, beautiful, awful, unspeakable. Nature was preternatural. The world, which is now divine only to the gifted, was then divine to whosoever would turn his eye upon it. Still more was the body of man, and the mystery of his consciousness, an emblem to them of God, and truly worshipful. How much more, then, was the worship of a hero reasonable? The transcendent admiration of a great man. For great men are still admirable. At bottom there is nothing else admirable. Admiration for one higher than himself is to this hour the vivifying influence in man's life, and is the germ of Christianity itself. The greatest of all heroes is one whom we do not name here. Without doubt there was a first teacher and captain of these northern peoples. A node impalpable to the sense, a real hero of flesh and blood. Tradition calls him inventor of the runes, or Scandinavian alphabet, and again of poetry. To the wild Norse souls this noble-hearted man was hero, prophet, god. That the man Odin, speaking with a hero's voice and heart, as with an impressiveness out of heaven, told his people the infinite importance of valor. How man thereby became a god, and that his people believed this message of his, and thought it a message out of heaven, and believed him a divinity for telling it to them. This seems to me the primary seed grain of the Norse religion. For that religion was a sternly impressive consecration of valor. 2. The hero as prophet. We turn now to Mohammedanism among the Arabs for the second phase of hero worship, wherein the hero is not now regarded as a god, but as one God-inspired, a prophet. Muhammad is not the most eminent prophet, but is the one of whom we are freest to speak. Nor is he the truest of prophets, but I do esteem him a true one. Let us try to understand what he meant with the world. What the world meant and means with him will then be more answerable. Certainly he was no scheming impostor, no falsehood incarnate. Theories of that kind are the product of an age of skepticism, and indicate the saddest spiritual paralysis. A false man found a religion? Why, a false man cannot build a brick house. No Mirabeau, Napoleon, Burns, Cromwell, no man adequate to do anything, but is first of all in right earnest about it. Sincerity is the great characteristic of all men in any way heroic. The Arabs are a notable people, their country itself is notable. Consider that wide, waste horizon of sand, empty, silent like a sea. You are all alone there, left alone with the universe, by day a fierce sun blazing down with intolerable radiance, by night the great deep heaven. With its stars, a fit country for a swift-handed, deep-hearted race of men. The Arab character is agile, active, yet most meditative, enthusiastic. Hospitable, taciturn, earnest, truthful, deeply religious, the Arabs were a people of great qualities, waiting for the day when they should become notable to all the world. Here, in the year 570 of our era, the man Muhammad was born, and grew up in the bosom of the wilderness, alone with nature and his own thoughts. From an early age he had been remarked as a thoughtful man, and his companions named him the Faithful. He was 40 before he talked of any mission from heaven. All this time living a peaceful life, he was looking through the shows of things into things themselves. Then, having withdrawn to a cavern near Mecca for a month of prayer and meditation, he told his wife Khadijah that, by the unspeakable favor of heaven, he was in doubt and darkness no longer, but saw it all. That all these idols and formulas were nothing, that there was one God in and over all. That God is great and is the reality. Allahu Akbar, God is great, and then Islam, we must submit to him. This is yet the only true morality known. A man is right and invincible, while he joins himself to the great deep law of the world, in spite of all superficial laws, temporary appearances, profit and loss calculations. This is the soul of Islam, and is properly also the soul of Christianity. We are to receive whatever befalls us as sent from God above. Islam means in its way the denial of self, annihilation of self. This is yet the highest wisdom that heaven has revealed to our earth. In Muhammad, and in his Quran, I find first of all sincerity, the total freedom from cant. For these 12 centuries his religion has been the guidance of a fifth part of mankind, and, above all, it has been a religion heartily believed. The Arab nation was a poor shepherd people, a hero prophet was sent down to them. Within 1 century afterwards Arabia is at Grenada on this hand, at Delhi on that. 3. The hero as poet. The hero as divinity and as prophet are productions of old ages, not to be repeated in the new. We are now to see our hero in the less ambitious, but also less questionable, character of poet. For the hero can be poet, prophet, king, priest, or what you will, according to the kind of world he finds himself born into. I have no notion of a truly great man that could not be all sorts of men. Indeed, the poet and prophet, participators in the open secret of the universe, are one, though the prophet has seized the sacred mystery rather on its moral side, and the poet on the aesthetic side. Poetry is essentially a song, its thoughts are musical not in word only, but in heart and in substance. Shakespeare and Dante are our 2 canonized poets, they dwell apart, none equal, none second to them. Dante's book was written, in banishment, with his heart's blood. His great soul, homeless on earth, made its home more and more in that awful other world. The 3 kingdoms, Inferno, Purgatorio, Paradiso, are like compartments of a great supernatural world cathedral, piled up there, stern, solemn, awful, Dante's world of souls. It is the sincerest of all poems. Sincerity here, too, we find to be the measure of worth. Intensity is the prevailing character of his genius, his greatness lies in fiery emphasis and depth. It is seen even in the graphic vividness of his painting. Dante burns as a pure star, fixed in the firmament, at which the great and high of all ages kindle themselves. As Dante embodies musically the inner life of the Middle Ages, so Shakespeare embodies for us its outer life, its chivalries, courtesies, humours, ambitions. Dante gave us the soul of Europe. Shakespeare gave us its body. Of this Shakespeare of ours, the best judgment of Europe is slowly pointing to the conclusion that he is the chief of all poets, the greatest intellect who has left record of himself in the way of literature. It is in portrait painting, the delineation of men, that the greatness of Shakespeare comes out most decisively. His calm, creative perspicacity is unexampled. The word that will describe the thing follows of itself from such clear intense sight of the thing. He takes in all kinds of men, a Falstaff, Othello, Juliet, Coriolanus, sets them all forth to us in their rounded completeness, loving, just, the equal brother of all. The degree of vision that dwells in a man is a correct measure of the man, and Shakespeare's is the greatest of intellects. Novalis beautifully remarks of him that those dramas of his are products of nature, too. Deep as nature herself. Shakespeare's art is not artifice, the noblest worth of it is not there by plan or precontrivance. The latest generations of men will find new meanings in Shakespeare, new elucidations of their own human being. Shakespeare, too, was a prophet, in his way, of an insight analogous to the prophetic, though he took it up in another strain. Nature seemed to this man also divine, unspeakable, deep as Tophet, high as heaven. We are such stuff as dreams are made of. There rises a kind of universal psalm out of Shakespeare, not unfit to make itself heard among the still more sacred psalms. England, before long, this island of ours, will hold but a small fraction of the English, east and west to the Antipodes there will be a Saxondom covering great spaces of the globe. What is it that can keep all these together into virtually one nation, so that they do not fall out and fight, but live at peace? Here, I say, is an English king whom no time or chance can dethrone. King Shakespeare shines over us all, as the noblest, gentlest, yet strongest of rallying signs. We can fancy him as radiant aloft over all the nations of Englishmen, 1,000 years hence. Truly it is a great thing for a nation that it gets an articulate voice. 4. The hero as priest. The priest, too, is a kind of prophet. In him, also, there is required to be a light of inspiration. He presides over the worship of the people, and is the uniter of them with the unseen holy. He is their spiritual captain, as the prophet is their spiritual king with many captains. Luther and Knox were by express vocation priests, yet it will suit us better here to consider them chiefly in their historical character as reformers. The battling reformer is from time to time a needful and inevitable phenomenon. Obstructions are never wanting. The very things that were once indispensable furtherances become obstructions, and need to be shaken off and left behind us, a business often of enormous difficulty. We are to consider Luther as an idol breaker, a bringer back of men to reality, for that is the function of great men and teachers. Thus it was that Luther said to the Pope, "This thing of yours that you call a pardon of sins, is a bit of rag paper with ink. It, and so much like it, is nothing else. God alone can pardon sins. God's church is not a semblance, heaven and hell are not semblances. Standing on this, I, a poor German monk, am stronger than you all." The most interesting phase which the Reformation anywhere assumes is that of Puritanism, which even got itself established as a Presbyterianism and national church among the Scotch, and has produced in the world very notable fruit. Knox was the chief priest and founder of that faith which became the faith of Scotland, of New England, of Oliver Cromwell, and that which Knox did for his nation we may really call a resurrection as from death. The people began to live. Scott